this is just the next generation of exercise. We've got the physical, exercise components down, and now it's about working out how can we actually train our minds.
Dr. Brewer is trying to understand how mindfulness can alter the functioning of the brain. He uses a cap lined with 128 electrodes.
We're going to start filling each of these 128 wells with conduction gel.
The electrodes are able to pick up signals from the posterior cingulate, part of a brain network linked to memory and emotion.
This is all just picking up electrical signal from the top of your head.
Since attending the mindfulness retreat, I'd been meditating daily and was curious to see if it had an impact on my brain.
We're going to have you start with thinking of something that was very anxiety-provoking for you.
Okay.
When I thought about something stressful, the cells in my brain's posterior cingulate immediately started firing, shown by the red lines that went off the chart on the computer screen.
Just drop into meditation.
Okay.
When I let go of those stressful thoughts and refocused on my breath, within seconds the brain cells that had been firing quieted down, shown by the blue lines on the computer.
That's really fascinating to see like that.
Dr. Brewer believes everyone can train their brains to reach that blue mindfulness zone.
Yeah, it's okay. You can ask. Is it politics?
No, I'm moving. One of the runs.
Do you remember the graph where the line went really far down below the baseline? And I was wondering if your experience, if you felt like that might have been a deeper meditation for you?
Yes, I felt it.
Yeah? Did you feel that was maybe the deepest that you were in? Or is it hard to remember?
Yeah, this one.
It was the one after you did the mantras and you said.
Yeah, I just tried to dissolve all the mantras in syllables. That's, yeah, I felt quite deep.
Okay.
That is also one of the techniques to go into this.
It's pretty striking.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a technique to go into Mahamudra. I did not know that.
Yeah.
No. Maybe you can describe, what's your definition of Mahamudra for those of us that aren't as familiar with it?
Okay.
People's brains when they're getting out of their own way. So here we brought in experienced meditators, folks who are really good at just being, to see what their brains would look like when they were meditating. So just to orient you, here's a brain, and here's a brain when you cut it down the middle minus all the blood and guts. And here's a network of brain regions called the default mode network. How do you think it got its name? Remember that 50% of the time when we're not present? In fact, Mark Rakel and his colleagues at Washington University in St. Louis serendipitously discovered this by giving people the simple task, lay in the scanner and don't do anything in particular. So what do we do when we don't do anything in particular? Can you relate? Well, it turns out that experienced meditators, these brain regions in the default mode network get really quiet when they're meditating. And this back part of the brain, called the posterior cingulate, this part that gets activated when we're craving, it gets activated when we're anxious, when we're getting in our own way, gets especially quiet during meditation. So what can we learn from this? Well, I know Hollywood might give you a particular idea of what we scientists are like, but we're actually pretty reserved. And we get really conservative when it comes to finding something new. How do we know our stuff's any good? Maybe we missed something. So we turned to a new technique called real-time fMRI neurofeedback, where we can actually take a picture of people's brains while they're meditating and see what it looks like from moment to moment to moment. So we did this with novice and experienced meditators. And we just had them lay in the scanner, meditate with their eyes open, and then check in with the graph to see how well their brain activity was corresponding to their experience. And they all reported a very good correspondence with increased activity in this posterior cingulate and getting in their own way, as well as decreased activity and being in a meditative state. So here's an example of a novice meditator. Here's an example of an experienced meditator. Now, I'm not very good at statistics, but even I can tell the difference between these two brains. Further, some of our experienced meditators were reporting spontaneously getting into flow during these sessions and seeing that this lined up with their posterior cingulates getting really, really quiet. But wait, there's more. Some of our novices were actually learning from this, even though we weren't telling them to. Here's an example. This novice said, yes, the first run lined up with my experience, second run lined up with my experience, and in the third run he said, wait a minute, your neurofeedback thing doesn't work. That thing was all red, the graph was all red, but I was thinking about my breath. What's the problem here? Thinking about my breath. He got caught up in thinking. In the very next run, only 9 minutes after starting this experiment, his brain looked completely different. And he said, oh, I get it. The physical sensation of the breath. Oh. In just 9 minutes, he learned the difference between getting caught up and getting out of his own way. Not to say that he's now a Buddha or can dunk on Michael Jordan, but perhaps he got a taste of flow. And just like my brain at the bottom of that mountain bike descent, he came out of that scanner and said, wow, what was that? When can I do it again? Reality is so much more delicious than our concepts of it. And if we can track it, we can train it. We can start to use what we're learning from this neuroscience to develop tools to help people learn and really see what it's like to get in. We all are awesome. We just have to get out of our own way. Thank you.